two, one, and we're live.
All right. Well, welcome everybody. Thank you for attending and welcome to our fifth weekly Eden Town Hall on Discord. My name is Felix Reese, aka Lion Flash, and I'm co-hosting with Dancing Joy, aka Dogman. So with our third official Eden election coming up this Saturday, July 9th, we have an opportunity to use today's time to discuss what we would like to see and hear opinions from the community. Today will be another free-flowing show, so before we dive in, I will toss it over to Dan to share a bit more.
Okay, cool. Sounds great. Thank you, Felix, and thank you everybody for joining us. It's great to be here. So yeah, we have lots of exciting news that's been happening in Eden and in EOS over the past week and over the past whole entire second term of Eden. So there's many interesting topics that we can discuss today. Just to give a brief high-level overview, as Felix said, the third election, official election, is coming up in less than 1 week on July 9th at 13 UTC. Everyone should make sure to register. It's a little bit tricky because technicalities, you have to register again after the smart contract is updated. It's in the process of being updated right now to be able to participate. You'll also need to register at least 24 hours in advance to participate in this election. I'm stoked for this election. There's almost 200,000 EOS in the treasury that will be used and that people can earn in funding to help build public goods and great projects with EOS. And it's also an amazing opportunity to meet people in the community and build relationships and lead EOS and also lead the future of true democracy and practical governance. So it's really cool stuff, as everybody here knows, I'm sure. And then also, I just listened to the Chief Delegates Call Meeting 12 that came out just today or yesterday. And there are many interesting insights. Just a couple quick highlights. One, the Vote.Eden lead has been selected with Dominic will be hosting the election, perhaps with some support from EO support. There's also the permissions have officially been transferred to the chief delegates for both the Eden and Genesis.Eden accounts. So it's kind of like Independence Day for Eden. Congratulations to the Eden community. And there's also some new accounts and circles for NFT.Eden, Vote.Eden, Media.Eden, Tech.Eden, and Apps.Eden. Apps.Eden will explore some DAO tooling with organizations and tools like Haifa, Fractally, and other systems. And then NFT.Eden, we're actually just talking for like probably 10, 15 minutes before we started recording about NFTs. Felix and I were just in the NFT working group meeting, and there's about 10 Eden members there who are doing amazing work developing Eden NFTs, and also Dwayne was just sharing some really fascinating ideas about Eden NFTs too. So that might be an interesting topic for us to return to now, or if anybody else has any other topics you'd like to discuss about Eden, then I'd love to hear it. And now I'll open it up if anybody would like to jump in, or if Felix would like to respond to that, then yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing everybody's thoughts.
Yeah, so I'd like to open it up also to our community. Welcome. I'm gonna kind of go through our list of everybody. So welcome Chris, Dwayne, Perry, Oscar, Lenny, and Doug. You guys are all very much appreciated. And yeah, so our last meeting with the the call that Dan just referred to was an NFT meeting that that Chuck is involved in, and I believe is Sachit who I think started this initiative. But it's very exciting because ideally it'd be super sweet to get involved and basically give you guys NFTs for participating in these weekly calls. And yeah, it's a lot of exciting things surrounding the NFT space. But then we also have obviously the election. I know I've seen Chris. I'm excited to see him push through and run for chief delegate again. Last election, he wanted to kind of let some new faces come in, and I've been seeing him in the Telegram chat, and looks like he's got a little fire under him. So I'm excited to hear his thoughts, his initiatives, what he's wanting to see going into the next election. And then also hearing from this community too, who's all planning on running. I hope to see everyone there to at least vote, and then hear what ideas you're wanting to support. And yeah, let's open up this conversation and see where it goes. So I'm excited. So with that, yeah, I'd like it to open it up to anyone who would like to jump in first. Play some background music while we wait. Unless
I'm sorry, what were you saying there, Felix?
I was gonna say, if you had any topic that you wanted to dive us into, feel free with that.
Well, yeah, I'm happy to discuss more about the NFTs, or also if anybody else wants to discuss anything else, that's cool. I was gonna shout out Gan Plasoka. Actually, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing your name correctly, um, but he shared a question saying, "Do we know the exact moment when the contract will be updated so we can start registering?" I don't believe that we do know that. So I think that we're all just going to have to just kind of keep an eye out. And being that this is the it's kind of a tumultuous time, or kind of just a time when Eden is really forming and uh, getting the software to work correctly with the new development team and so forth. I think that we'll just have to just look out, and I think it'll happen the next day or two, but I'm not sure about that. And yeah, thank you very much for asking that. And then also, there's some comments about the NFTs too, about maybe blending NFTs. That might be an interesting thing to discuss as well.
Yeah. So real quick too, as far as I'm aware, I think I believe we're supposed to go ahead and sign up, even though the date isn't up to date on the Eden election page. So right now I see 46 members that are signed up and planning on participating. But it does still show the old date. It would be nice to get that updated because I think that as soon as possible, because that can draw some confusion there. But I believe, I don't know. I guess correct me if I'm wrong, if anyone knows for sure about that. But from what I've seen, at least that's what I've been under the assumption is like, go ahead, just sign up so you're officially in, and then all that's needed to change is the actual date, which would be just the text. I don't know if that would actually change signing up to participate.
Yeah,
But yeah.
I'm not sure. I think I might have seen Todd Fleming, who's one of the chief engineers at Fractally, saying that it's not that flexible and you do have to sign up again, but I'm really not sure. And I suppose it's good to be safe and just make sure that, check it throughout the week. So if it does update to see if you're not registered, then that's probably the safest way to do it, because you don't want to have to miss it just because of a contract glitch. And thank you, Doug, for sharing the link to the election there as well.
Yeah, hey, I don't know if you can hear me. How's everyone? As far as I know, they've been repeating again and again that even if you register for the elections now, you're gonna have to do it again when the contract is updated. So we don't really have to do it now. I already did like several months ago, but doing it now will not make any difference because you have to do it again when the contract is updated.
Okay, it sounds great. That's what I thought. And thank you very much, Oscar. We were able to hear you loud and clear, by the way, and doing well here, and hope that you're doing well. Thanks for sharing that information, and helping everybody to prepare for the Eden election. And yeah, I would also be interested if you have any other thoughts about Oscar. If you want to just listen, then and share some occasional insights like that, then that's cool. But if you have any thoughts about the upcoming Eden election, I'd be very curious to hear what you're planning to run for and stuff like that. Also, Felix mentioned Chris having that extra fire, and I've been appreciating Chris's posts in the Eden Telegram chats, encouraging everybody to join. And I know that Chris has some exciting plans and proposals. I still haven't been able to check the Miro board, unfortunately, but I'm planning to check it soon. But I'd be interested to hear from Chris or Oscar about more of this. Also, Dwayne was sharing some really exciting stuff about that. So yeah, whoever would like to share, I'd be interested to hear, or else we can continue talking about the NFTs, I suppose.
I can jump in if it's okay. I did miss. I was driving there and I missed what Oscar said. Did he clarify about the sign in and how the website's just the UI is off, but I think we're good to sign in?
I think that he said the opposite of that, sort of saying that even though the UI is off, that means the smart contract is also off too. And so when you hit to sign again, but did I misunderstand? Is that correct, Oscar? And it looks like maybe Oscar can't hear us anymore. And it looks like Dwayne and Doug are experimenting with some cool backgrounds too. Oh, hopefully you're doing well there in that spaceship looking set up there, Doug.
Well, I noticed so basically something in the contract certainly has changed because people who were previously opted in were no longer. So the list went from 44 and it sat there for some time. And then Edenia made a change. I did look at the GitHub and I think the pull request to change the date did go through. So, I mean, there's confusion. They changed two things. They changed the set point of needing to schedule an election with 30-day window to 7 days. And they changed the duration between election from 180 days to 90. And that was accepted in the GitHub. So I thought it looked like it was done. It's just I did see a comment that the UI is what's off, and so the website is showing an incorrect date, but it's not because of the smart contract. So I think people should just sign in and hopefully, and if things change, we can clarify. But it's probably better just to sign in now and be safe.
Okay, cool. That sounds good. Thanks, Chris. And it looks like Oscar is saying we need to sign up again, but he's having a poor connection. And welcome, Patrick, as well. I see we're turning on videos here, which I think I'll also set up my stand turn on video because I feel like that makes it more personal. So that's cool. Thanks for doing that, and thanks for sharing cool background there, Doug. Again, experimenting all these cool like Candyland and mushrooms and stuff. Might also be interesting. I mean, we're talking about the logistics of an election and signing up, which is helpful, of course, but it'd be interesting to get into the more like substantive and exciting details as well, as far as like what people will run for and new developments with all sorts of things with like the NFTs or what the chief delegates were talking about, perhaps, or also Eden Fractal stuff going on. But yeah, there's so many different things we can discuss, and I think it'd be cool to. I mean, this is our last election, or rather our last town hall before the election. So if there's anything that anybody wants to get out or share as far as I think should happen for the election, or that we should do or coordinate for, then this would also be a great opportunity to do that and discuss these kind of initiatives that we can take as a community.
Sure, I'll just maybe start just talk about NFTs really quickly and just say, wow, those the NFTs that Chuck has been making look incredible for the Fractally meetings, and just I'm exploring NFTs and then also seeing how to gamify the NFTs when you are giving them out for participation. And I was just mentioning that it's been talked about to back those tokens with EOS, and I believe I'm correct in saying to get the EOS out of the NFT, you can burn it. But we've seen .gems kind of gamify also a blend where you kind of collect so many, in this case, say participation NFTs, and then you can blend up to some other NFT that's more glossy, more important, more rare. The interesting part is combining those two. If you had a NFT for participating that was backed with EOS, and you blend those, you lose your EOS. And there would just be a clarification on which blend contract you're using, just to notify the community where those backed EOS were going, just to make sure they weren't just burnt. So there's a possibility when you blend that the backing can go back to the author or the community account. And then, with that, it would be, if these are participation, maybe a leaderboard would really show, what have people done with their NFTs instead of just transferring or selling them. If you burnt them or blended them, it would kind of show and commemorate in time that you had those, and just to show a history of that through kind of a leaderboard of blending or burning. And then the last action, maybe not the last, but one more action, obviously, you could do with NFTs is stake them. So if I had a NFT, Eden NFT backed with EOS, if I staked it, maybe we'd be signaling, that we're holding that for some cause. So yeah, just some interesting dynamics besides just being a hodler of an NFT. The backing of them, and then either burning and blending and staking had some interesting community dynamics for sure. So.
Yeah, big shout out, Dwayne. I participated in the LD2 token distribution or not token, the NFT claim. I guess it was, yeah, 2 day on July 1st, which is super exciting too, because yeah, that felt historic as well. Those are possibly, at least as far as everyone on the from discussions with the team is over at LD2, is that's the first NFT that's been released that's backed by real silver. So yeah, that in itself too adds super value, because like if you start to kind of go down like learning a little bit more about precious metals, like you have these I guess you call them third parties, or basically authenticators, that they look at the coin, they know like the history of the mint, the conditioning, and then that in itself adds extra value on top of just for the raw precious like metal material of the coin. So like I have a couple gold coins that are like they're they're not just like worth they're worth more than just the actual gold itself, because of the mint condition and like I guess the release of it. And so basically you can just make the NFT out of that with all that data behind it, and then you're pairing it. It's just it's super cool and super exciting. Um, but yeah, so yeah, it's tough because we got well, I don't know. I guess if anyone else has anything else they would like to add about the NFTs, I was kind of wanting to hop into. I guess I really kind of am curious. I wanted to ask kind of and open up. We talked a lot about it last week. About going into this Eden election, about uh well, we have the, I guess, proposed bylaws, and I think that's something that's interesting to open up that discussion around again. Last week, Chuck and I kind of went back and forth on the increase from 5% to 15%. So I'd be interested to hear Chris's viewpoint, if that's something he'd be supporting, of like doing the increase, or is he like, are you going to leave that to the election, and in the rooms, kind of gauging the feedback of all the people in your room, and dependent on I guess I see this as a thing that could be a I don't know, a yes or no, as far as like, am I going to support you to move on if you choose to support this bylaw, or if you're not going to like push that through, or you're just going to kind of leave that more open. So yeah, I guess.
Yeah. Thanks for the question, Felix. My view is I'm okay with 15%. I think that it's the idea we've spoken, if you followed the chats from the previous CDs and the current CDs, it's the idea, should we request more money from the ENF? And Chuck made a really good point once, that you don't go to the bank to request a loan when you still have money in your savings account. You use it, right? You spend the money you have, and then you request more. So I'm of the opinion to spend more of the treasury faster, to then do something with it that's objectively obvious that we did something of value, that we can point to and say, look, we spent the money and here's what we did. This is good for Eden. This is good for EOS. Now we'd like a top up. To me, that's a better path to getting more funding and more support from currently the only funding source available, which is the ENF. And so I'm very supportive of increasing the spend to 15% to help facilitate getting more done with the funding that we have kind of locked in the treasury. Because the other thing to consider is, it's not like that 5% number that we've been currently using is some sort of mathematical proof, or Pareto distribution, or Dunbar number, or Fibonacci sequence. It's not like there's some sort of really concrete rationale to say, yep, 5% is the number. That's what we should use. So I think considering that, I'm definitely open. And if it comes down to being stuck in a room when someone says, I'm not going to vote for you if you accept these bylaw changes, then don't vote for me. I don't think I'm not, for what I want to do and to bring into this next election, I've made a relationship with Haifa DAO. I've confirmed that I can get Eden to use the Haifa tool as part of their alpha test group. So basically so that whole Miro board and the circle thing, that basically can overlay perfectly into the Haifa tool. And we can use Anchor wallets. We can use those accounts because it's built on Telos. So it's a pretty seamless user experience, and we can just test it. So it's an opt-in voluntary solution to create structure and try to achieve more as an organization using that tool. So that's also what I'm going to be bringing to the election, is that relationship and the confirmation that I've secured that for us. Yeah, okay, I'll stop there.
Okay. Well, yeah, thank you for your response, Chris. I guess I'd like to add a couple counterpoints. I also, because so last week, Chuck was kind of under the same position as you, and yeah, I took his insight, and it's something I'm still thinking about a lot. But I think one of the counterpoints that I offered that I felt is valid is, you know, the increasing it to 15%, it depletes our treasury quicker. And also I think the timing of it is a little bit, I don't know if it's necessarily the smartest idea, because if we increase it to 15%, we're depleting our treasury quicker. And with things kind of on the line going into September, with a lot of great news coming in with EOS, with the Trust EVM, the Token 2049 um, event, and then just all the EVM. These can all be very good catalysts to increase the price for EOS. And if the whole point of increasing it to 15% is just to have more capital to deploy, that's where I kind of raise caution. Is like, well, why? Like, strategically, why would we deploy capital quicker if things are starting to look that we could have that capital here in the next couple months, and then are we going to come back to the ENF and request more funding, which it theoretically could be less in EOS, because if the price appreciates, then we would be getting less funding. Like, I just think we need to be very strategic and cautious of deploying the funds, especially since we have some big events coming around the corner that could appreciate the price of EOS, which if the main point of increasing from 5% to 15% is for more capital, then yeah, that's a point that I think that we need to really think about as a community. And that's
Yeah.
kind of my counterpoint to that, raising it to 15%.
I see your point. It makes sense, but in the end, it's like a chicken and egg thing, right? Like, if we just sit on these funds and we just try to scrape by, then we just have to accept we're not going to get as much done. So if we're happy with that and not achieving as much because we have less funding available, then so be it. But if we have more funds on hand, can do more, that actually might even be another example of the different points you pointed to as to why EOS price might go up in the future. If Eden has more capital over the next 3 months, we can do some things that further add to that narrative. So you know what I mean? Like, it's kind of, and the other thing is, if that view that you have is shared by many, then maybe those who are conscientious and want to work towards Eden and the greater cause and don't want to deplete the treasury, even if it is 15%, they will take less. They'll say, you know what, I expect $30 an hour for my wages, but you're going to pay me in EOS, and I think EOS is going to go up, so I'll do it for 20. So we might even get more bang for a buck that way. If that's the view, right, that price of EOS is going to go up, okay, well then do it for less EOS and hold it, and the price will go up. But anyway, it's tough. It's a chicken and egg thing. Either we take the capital and use it and hope that something comes out of it that we can then point to ask for more capital, or we sit on it, hope the price goes up, don't do as much, and have less to point to get more capital. There is no perfect answer, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's a very, I feel like, tricky situation right now. Yeah, well, I just feel like we'll see how the whole thing plays out. I also am kind of approaching the election as like, I'm wanting to attend and run. One of the things that I'm wanting to push for is obviously the Eden Fractal. I think funding fractals is important. Yeah, the 15% too. I guess I would like to kind of see, like, well, what are the plans of how those funds would be deployed right then and there. And another, I guess, counterpoint that I provided, though, is by us increasing it to 15%, then we set a precedent that, okay, now, like, I don't know if this is something that we should be playing with being able to change the rate of the treasury drawdown, because not only does this play with, I mean, if you believe that it technically, if you increase it to 15%, then you're playing with future delegate and chief delegate funding by depleting it quicker. And then also we're setting the precedent that we can just, now it can be changed based off a proposed bylaw going into the next election, and then that leads to I don't know if you can call it a moral hazard, but it's kind of hard to think that it's not too hard to think that the next set of chief delegates will be like, well, a proposal for more funding is on the table. Why would we not take it? Like everyone would like more funding right then and there, even though like that would be more short term thinking than the longer term thinking. So that's another kind of counterpoint to why I think we should be cautious with the increase from 5 to 15%. Including like, has there been any
Phoenix-
attempt from Eden to ask for additional funding?
Sorry, Felix, not Phoenix. If aren't able to change the distribution and the use of funds, who does? Oh, sorry, we cut out. I might have talked over you and not realized. I was just asking if the chief delegates after an election, so we're following the process, incumbents aren't changing the rules and implementing them within their term. They're proposing it as a bylaw change, allowing an election to take place to then have buy-in to change it. If we don't follow that process or allow the chief delegates to change the distribution, then who does? Like how could we ever touch the treasury? Is it just it would be fixed forever if that's what you're saying?
Well, yeah, I mean that's where I don't understand why we should. I just think that gives too much power to be able to change the distribution, because then now all you have to do is basically, I feel, corrupt the next set of upcoming chief delegates to approve the funding. If you know, okay, 5% is what's on the table and it's set in stone for from here on out, then the money that's on the table is the money that's on the table. There's no borrowing in a sense. Like, yeah, I start to kind of think of it like kind of like what we have now. Like it's like taking on debt, even though it's not debt because we're taking it from the treasury, but you're changing the amount, and then you're taking from the treasury that could be distributed for longer terms out in the future. So rather than increasing the 5%, I would advocate why not go and try to achieve more funding. So that's why I'm curious, like, has there been any efforts from the current chief delegates to reach out to the ENF to ask for more funding? Does the ENF not feel that
we haven't spent the money we have though, Felix? Like that's exactly the point that Chuck made. You don't go to a bank and ask for a loan when you still have money in your savings account. You use what you have first. You deploy the capital you have on hand. And if we're too skittish, like you could do the counter argument, say, you know what, instead of 15%, it should be 1%. If your point is that we need to extend this treasury as long as possible, well, then we can. Like a proposal could be put forth to change it to 1%, and you could run on that. And then maybe that gets buy-in that, yeah, we want this treasury to last 10 years. It'll be very minuscule, but it'll last a lot longer. And again, the idea that a bylaw is it's a proposal. There's no gun to anyone's head in the next election. This is the whole point. We're using the fact that this isn't allowing incumbent advantage to change the rules. No rule has been changed. It's just a proposal. The next set of chief delegates could say, no, we don't accept it. It remains 5. And that's it. And it goes to the next election. And like, so there's no force. There's no moral hazard here. Everyone is going in with eyes wide open as to what the proposal is. And no one has to accept it.
Right. No, and yeah, I'm not against, the proposal itself, because yeah, like you said, it doesn't hurt to have it on there. It's on. What I think is this is going to set the precedent, kind of like, when we had the first pre-trial election, the very first one, when you guys chose to go and vote for you to be the chief delegate or the head chief delegate over John, because in the prior round, Eves had offered to do a matching only if John got elected, but you guys chose that just didn't feel right. That felt like that's an outside influence that was having an impact on who you would choose as that final head chief delegate. And so you guys set the precedent that, hey, we're not going to go by that. And so I think, setting precedents has some importance in a way. And so like, I see this as another precedent setting time where, if these chief delegates all do decide and reach consensus to change the 15%, now that sets the precedent that, like, okay, we're cool with being able to change the amount of treasury drawdown. And I think that's a problem, because
if you don't use the election, then what's the point of having it? Like, the precedent is you use the election process to make big rule changes. What would be a bad precedent is if the chief delegates right now said, hey, we've got the active keys, we will unilaterally change it to 15% today. That would be a bad precedent. And they could do that. There's no rule. There's nothing stopping them from changing that right now. And that would be a bad precedent. But using the election process to make big changes is the right precedent. Like, that's exactly what we're here for. Propose big changes and then use the election to ratify them or not. That's like, there is no bad precedent. We're following the game as it's meant to be played. Like, this is it. This is the whole point.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree with that. That is a good point. I guess I would want to kind of get feedback from everyone else in the room, because, you know, we won't be able to tell until the actual election happens. For me, that's something I'm wanting to voice. You know, going into the election is, I don't think we should increase to 15%. I think we need to look at other avenues to, if we need more funding to achieve some of the things we want, okay, well, let's put that on the chief delegates. Like, that's part, I think, you know, that could be a responsibility, or, you know, initiative that can be that can be on the chief delegates, is like, hey, you guys are great leaders, go out and see if we can get more funding. We like, I don't know, I don't necessarily like, we got money in the savings account, we need to wait before we ask for a loan. Well, okay, so you're dependent on the bank, so we're dependent on the ENF. The whole purpose of Eden is to be independent. And if it, you know, for me, my argument is, you know, we are making progress. I don't see how, you know, the ENF has shown that, you know, I think, you know, they like what we're doing. I would like to see the effort of, like, or I guess the initiative of reaching out to ENF and seeing why we can't get more funding for, like, why do we need to spend, like, I look at it as, like, the treasury is also keeping it at 5% as like a contingency, in case we are not able to capture any more funding. You know, obviously, like, we have faith and belief in the ENF, that it's awesome that we're able to get the funding, but it's also trying to also disconnect and be a little bit more dependent. I think there's other avenues that we could also get funding. Like, it would be cool to reach out to the Helios team. You know, Brock is a chief delegate right now. He has some funds from the Helios, from the Block 1, and you know, there can be an argument that, you know, some people feel that those funds should be deployed out into the community. So why not make, you know, that great, like, I think that would be a great like gesture to also support Eden outside. And so then now we have a donor out, not only from the, like, other than just the ENF. So it's not just like, okay, well, anytime we need funding, we have to go to the ENF. And if the ENF is saying, like, okay, well, you need to spend all your money first before you get more funding, then that's almost like, okay, well, you need to be completely dependent on what I'm saying in order to get more funding. And I'm not saying that's what it is. I'm trying to play, like, devil's advocate of being, like, completely trying to strive to be independent and not super dependent on, like, what one person is saying. Because if the thought is like, oh, well, you have plenty of money, you should be able to make moves. Well, it's like, well, I think the reason the 5% was written is to be able to use that treasury, to prolong it, to use it as a contingency in case you're not able to get additional funding.
I would suggest you run
Let
on
me-
changing the treasury pool to 1% then. I think you've got a lot of narrative and point there. So I think you should extend it. The continuation of your logic, Felix, is to say it should be 1%, not 5. So I would suggest you run on that and see if you get buy-in.
I mean,
So,
I don't. I mean, I like the 5% right now. I'm advocating not changing it at all, because the initial design, and this is something though too, I would like to hear a little bit more feedback from, you know, the creators of the initial design, of, like, why they went with 5% and what the thoughts are of increasing it to 15%. I think you know, Andrew Ware, he was on our last on the last town hall show when we were talking about it, and, you know, he brought up the point, if we go to 15%, our funds get drawn down within almost like, pretty quickly. Like, we cut the treasury in half pretty quickly at the 15% drawdown. And like I said, that just doesn't seem strategically smart, given the potential catalyst events of the token appreciation coming up here in you know, August, September.
I just want to jump in. So these are fascinating discussions, and I also agree that Andrew Ware has made some very cogent points about how it kind of does centralize Eden over time to increase the disbursement to 15%, and I think it might be more agreeable amongst the community if it was 10%, because 15% is a fairly large jump, and so I don't know how I feel about it. I mean, I think that both Chuck and Felix are making good points here, but something I want to just mention, which I feel like is pretty helpful information, and also Doug asked it like 16 minutes ago or over that. So thank you, Doug, for asking that. And just to touch upon these answers, which might help guide our conversation here, Doug asks about how much EOS has ENF spent in the last calendar year and what has it accomplished. And then he also asked how much EOS has Eden spent in the last calendar year and what has it accomplished. I don't know the exact numbers off the top of my head, and we could research them. But as far as I'm aware, well, the ENF publishes how much they spent in the ENF quarterly report, which came out in Q1, and I imagine the Q2 report will come out in the coming weeks. And I think it was, I might be totally off, but I think it was something in the range of like $10 to $15 million worth of EOS. Although, of course, the price of EOS has changed over time. And also, I think it might be best to just measure in EOS rather than dollars, but just for the point of simplicity, something like that. And there's more details in the quarterly report. And then how much Eden has spent in the last calendar year and what has accomplished. Well, I think that Eden was first seeded with maybe 600,000 EOS, and the price of EOS was also higher at that point too. So it's difficult to.
260,000. It was 200,000 EOS plus 200 EOS per person. So it ended up being a deposit of roughly 260,000 EOS, and we spent about 70,000. And I don't know how you could quantify what we've done with it. I think that's part of the problem with Eden. It's hard to us to point to what we've actually done.
So thank you very much for clarifying, Chris. I was completely off there and giving a terrible overestimate. So yes, that's correct. 260,000 EOS approximately. And about the second point about what has accomplished, I mean, we can go on and on about both of these. As I mentioned, the ENF quarterly report, or just like the EOSnetwork.com website, is a great way to see what the ENF is doing, EOS YouTube channel. And then also, as far as Eden, I would say like there's a lot. I don't really agree with Chris's assessment that, or I don't know if it's Chris's assessment exactly, and we've spoken about this before. Like, I understand that Chris agrees that Eden has done a tremendous amount of benefits for EOS by bringing the community together and also fostering the growth of new communities and helpful initiatives like EOS Support and EOSBs and the Eden Fractal and these town halls and so many other initiatives. But I think Chris's idea is that Eden itself hasn't grown a huge amount or organized a huge amount. Although I think even that's not quite true. Like the Eden community is still very active, and you have people like Chris and also Jesse came with a great proposal. The Eden Fractal recently sprouted from Eden, and also these town halls have. And then there's lots of work that's being done even with this current disbursement amount at 5%. And specifically Eden, and then also in terms of like peripheral effects for the entire EOS ecosystem. And then also like there's a point that I made last week too, that I've been attending the Fractally meetings every week along with Felix and Dwayne and Oscar and many other community members here, Patrick and Doug, and there's no funding that's being dispersed there. And I feel like overall, like Felix is talking about independence. And at some point when we're getting funding from EOS and EOS is our only method of funding, then that makes us depending on EOS. It makes us either dependent on the ENF or if, like Felix was saying, potentially if somebody like Helios or somebody else helps fund it, then it still creates dependency on whatever organization funds it. And so really like what makes Fractally so powerful and the fractal mechanism so powerful is that it makes true DAOs that have consensus over their own token and their own respect. And as we've seen in the Fractally group, I mean, a lot of people aren't joining every week, but like it's progressing way faster than Eden in many ways, and there's no funding at all. And it just like that belief in the token and that belief in the respect and the belief in the community. It kind of reminds me a little bit of that book Yuval Harari wrote about Sapiens, about how like money and all these different things are like, it's a matter of belief, and it's a matter of like working together as a community for the shared interest. And so I'm not exactly sure like what the EOS community and the Eden community needs the funding for. I mean, there's lots of things that the funding would certainly be helpful, but I think that there's also a lot we can do just by like being creative with our tools as well. And especially the Fractally process enables so much development without necessarily having more funding. But yeah, anyway, I've been rambling a bit. Those are just some thoughts, and I'd love to hear what everybody thinks about any of that stuff.
I think that it would be better. I would prefer to see the specific proposals that would drive us to need from 5% to 15%. Like, what specifically is driving that? I'm not really comfortable increasing it before we know exactly what we're going to do. There's so many things that need to settle and that we need to really put in place, I think, in Eden before we start increasing the funding, especially by 3 times. There's so many, and I think there's much lower hanging fruit. We just need to just house cleaning. Like, for example, control of the EOS Telegram channel. I feel like that's a really good role for Eden, the organization, to control that channel, just like they're controlling their own Eden channel. So, on behalf of the community, the chief delegates should control the EOS Telegram channel. I saw a post yesterday by Eves accusing Dan of making a condescending comment when he was referring to the shift from decentralization to centralization. And Eves made a comment saying that was condescending. In my eyes, that was factual. And that's very difficult for me to hear from Eves when he's on video making disparaging comments about Dan months earlier. Now, that video, I believe, has been since deleted. I believe it was an Everything EOS video, but the idea that there's a threat to ban Dan on the EOS Telegram makes no sense to me. So I think a reasonable role and kind of the low-hanging fruit for me is to get our house in order, and let's take care of that kind of thing first before we start increasing the funding, before we even know what it's going to go to. So those are my thoughts on that.
Thank you, Perry. Just to provide a little bit of color, so I believe that the funding is specifically intended to go towards the 3 circles that were identified in the member services proposal, being the tech.eden, I suppose media.eden, and vote.eden. So it's partially to pay people like Dominic and Dario at EO Support to help actually run the elections, both this election and the future. They put out some RFPs where people will be paid for doing this service, I believe. And then also the tech.eden circle, where I believe Edgar Fernandez and the Adania team will be and are currently like exploring the code. And I think that they're aiming to use and refine and perhaps rebuild and I suppose lead the development of the Eden code base, and they want payment to do so. And then also the media to, I suppose,
just clarify, Dan. Sorry to interrupt. Just that that's slightly inaccurate, right? So the funding change won't. There's no dictation as to where the funding goes. There's nothing in the bylaws that talks about that. So it's not accurate to say that the change from 5 to 15 will then be directed towards those circles. That's not true. The 5 to 15 will then be directed directly to delegates. Okay. So it simply increases the delegate and chief delegate amount. And also consider the price of EOS is roughly a third of what it was when it was 5%. So if anything, this is just rebalancing the draw rate in USD as to what it used to be. So it's not really that outlandish. And just to respond to Perry's comment, there was no talk in there other than one guy who put up a poll to kick Dan out. No one else is talking about that, especially none of the administrators. So that's not really something that's being seriously considered within the EOS project Telegram channel.
Yeah, and that guy, and there's actually like maybe 2 people or so, but they were widely kind of disagreed with, and I think that everybody is definitely in support of Dan being in the Telegram channel, of course. But thanks for sharing the ideas. I'm sorry, Felix, go.
Yeah, and to address though, see, I think that another counterpoint though to, you know, our the price of EOS has been cut in third. That should be even more reason why we should be able to go to the ENF and be like, hey, you funded originally us, you know, this amount, but it's been cut in third. Can you, you know, help us out with the cut down rather than asking us to go into our treasury and pulling that? And yeah, I just, if EOS does what I think it's going to do in September, we are, what we're doing by increasing it to 15% now is we're just giving a ton of capital right away out to this
community members.
next set of delegates and
To
chief
community
delegates.
We're going to give that capital to community members, Felix. We're not giving it away to the gods. We're giving it to people in our community. That's great. Good for them. That's awesome. We should be encouraging that more people participate. And guess what? You'll take the upside of that EOS. That's awesome. And again, it's like, imagine you have a ton of money in the bank and you go to your dad and say, hey, Dad, I need some cash to buy a baseball glove. And he's like, well, you got $300 in your account. What do you need more money for? Well, I'm saving that because I want to stretch it over the next 5 years. It's kind of an irrational statement. It's like the ENF has funded us. They've given us money. It's not pragmatic to say, hey, we'd like more, even though we haven't spent everything you gave us. Like there's a break in that logic. And just also to note, the ENF is going to provide an additional lump sum of funding to pay for the election. That's not well known or probably not discussed, but I do believe, from my understanding, is that the payment to cover Dominic and Adenia's fees to get everything across the line, because there is a shortage of funding within Eden to make these things happen. I do believe the ENF is going to step up in a one-time payment to make that happen, because it's needed, because they want to see Eden succeed and they want to see it move forward. But the idea we should go to them for just more money to sit into the treasury so we can look at it and not actually use it, I wouldn't want to give us more money for that reason. If I was Eve, I think that doesn't make sense.
Welcome, Chuck.
Yeah, I wouldn't say we're looking
Also
at it though,
Sebastian.
if it's getting distributed the normal at the normal 5%. If the reason we're wanting to increase it is because the price got cut in third, then I don't see how that's unreasonable to go to the ENF and saying like, hey, you know, because the network and the price has got cut in third, your guys' initial contribution based off the initial design that was set at 5% it's not going to be sufficient to be able to deploy the things that we have in line, and the ENF is keeping their hand on the pulse of everything that's going on. If they are supporting what we're wanting to increase for 15% to roll out, then why not match that the decrease in the EOS price rather than increasing the treasury rollout when that was a part of the initial design? I'm not sure if Chuck is talking, but it shows a green box around. I'm not hearing anything. Is anyone else?
Yeah, I'm not hearing Chuck either. Are you trying to speak, Chuck? It looks like he's not trying to speak, although he's unmuted. Maybe he's having issues. I know that Chuck is. Oh.
You got me now?
Yep, it's a little faint, but we got you.
Sorry. Yeah, my kid just keeps stealing my microphone. To clarify, the Eden is not funded by the ENF. There have been 4 transactions that have gone out of grants.esio, and those have been, the first transaction sent 250,000 some odd EOS to Eden. The first transaction funded the ENF, and then the next transaction funded Eden, and then the next transaction funded the next top up for the ENF, and then the fourth transaction.
Anything is everybody else hearing, or?
Yes, Chuck is speaking.
That's odd.
We're able to hear him.
I'm not hearing Chuck.
Welcome to Discord.
Okay. Yeah, there seems to be some weird issues with Discord, where that was happening with Patrick too. At some point, I might suggest going to Zoom, which seems to be more reliable. But maybe if you just try leaving and rejoining Perry, that might fix it.
The fourth transaction was 10 EOS just last week. And it was from that account to Eden, and that was just to do the permissions transfer. So to reiterate, Eden is not funded by the ENF. the ENF gives a rubber stamp, or not a rubber stamp, explicit authorization that or recommendation that the network should fund Eden. So we don't want the ENF is not going to be directing funding towards Eden on a regular basis. They want to do it in one-time top-ups from the network. The only way that the network can, like the ENF can't get away legally with sending us money from them with no receipt to a bunch of quasi-anonymous people. The network is sending us funding, and it's with the approval of the ENF, but the network trusts the ENF's judgment in this case to say yes, send this contract some funding, and we don't need to provide a receipt for that. So right now we have no mechanism for Eden to spend its treasury at all, other than through its programmed smart contract, which is 5% a month. So even for paying for a contractor to do work, we were hoping at the beginning of our chief delegate term, you heard us say it, we were hoping to draw from the treasury to pay for these expenditures, and then hope that we could get topped up from the network. But that's impossible. The code does not allow us to transfer from the Eden Treasury, Genesis.Eden, to any other account. It's all programmed in. So what we have to do is appeal to the ENF to fund a contractor who's going to be declaring income and providing a receipt and all that. So Adania and Agenix are the contractors, and they're, everything's legal, but it's going through the ENF. Now, ideally, we want to be able to program in our circles to be funded by the Treasury, like on a monthly disbursement basis, just as the members, the elected members, the delegates are funded on a monthly basis. So if we have technical needs, if we want to develop our code, we should have a bucket of funding there that we can deploy to that purpose. And that's the point of having these official circles.
I guess another thing I guess would like to kind of pose is I just think it would be more efficient if we're already anticipating a top up from the ENF at some point down the line. Isn't it more efficient and wise to do it during the time when we are possibly at the bottom of the EOS price? And as far as the circles, I just why can't delegates fund those circles? Like we can have the circles, but they get the funding from the delegates. So then we are electing the delegates to fund those circles.
That is what's going to happen. So Chuck's talking maybe future state, what could happen, and that would have to be a bylaw if we're going to start to make explicit rules that draw from the Treasury to fund these things. So I think, yes, Felix, it'll definitely be like an opt-in voluntary. If a chief delegate becomes one, he can say, I'm going to use my funding and fund this. So that's how it would work. And the other thing, again, you've mentioned the idea that the price of EOS is going to go up in a few months. I like your optimism, and I hope it does too, but that's something you can't bank on. Like if this winter lasts for 6 months, it doesn't much matter. Like we might get a small pop in EOS, but it's not like it's going to, we need the whole market to move for really that to be meaningful.
Yeah, I agree. It does fall a little bit into speculation. But just given the mechanics of how the EVM and locking up liquidity, just I think naturally it makes sense, like how we should expect some, and I get it that it does fall into speculation. It's just
here's another way to look at it. Would you expect the ENF to stop spending money and funding things because the price of EOS is down? And Telos and Wax and all these other chains that have treasuries built around their native token, because they could say, hey, you know what, we gotta shut down the doors. We're gonna just holding pattern. Everyone's laid off, and we wait for the price to go up, and then we'll put everyone back to work. That's kind of what you're suggesting.
Well, there has to be some response to price.
I'm not sure if Felix just doesn't want to answer that. I was kind of thinking that Felix would reply. Maybe Felix having technical issues. I was also curious too, if it's not distracting the conversation too much. The point that you made before, Chris, about how the circles will only be suggested, really. So I thought that Michael's Eden members' proposal was originally to have the funding stay relatively the same to the chief delegates, actually going slightly smaller, I believe, to the delegates than previously, but then have approximately 10% of the funding going directly to the circles. Although, from what I'm understanding now, it seems like maybe that's just the proposal, but the actual bylaws are only saying to increase the funding. So the funding will go to the delegates, and then the delegates will have an option to fund the circles if they want to. But if they don't want to, then the circles won't be funded, or they'll be funded otherwise, the ENF or in some other arrangement like that. Is that a correct understanding?
Yes, exactly. There's no, like, the whole point about these circles, and like this has come up from Luca and the guys from EOS support, right? It's this idea of it is supposed to be a voluntary opt-in, people can do what they want. And that remains. I think what myself and Chuck and Michael, like, we're trying to put forward this idea that chief delegates should want, like, Eden members should want to fund these circles, because if we do, then Eden as an organization can start to achieve more. And again, I look at our website, it's not up to date. Look at how difficult it was for us to get this code sorted out. Like this, we're running really inefficiently. And if we want to try to grow and scale and create this draw for new members and bring in new people and become this organization that promotes fractal democracy, so municipalities can use it to select their mayors and schools can use it to select their high school representatives, all of that is not happening on the pace that we're currently on. I mean, it's just a fact. And so if we want that to happen, I sure do, we need to start to organize Eden a little more. And that's the point of these circles. And hopefully folks participate in the election and see that same vision and then voluntarily choose to use their funding to support the circles. If you have enough buy-in and people think, yeah, these circles, and maybe 3 months later we prove that, okay, yeah, this worked. This is actually a really great way to do it. We incorporate the fractally method to pay people for work, but it's funded via these circles. Then we get enough people to buy in, and yeah, sure, we change the bylaws to say, okay, now we're going to actually explicitly draw funding directly from the Treasury and put it into these circles. But that's definitely not the proposal today. It's too many steps. Like it's too big of a jump. I think it's one of those baby step things.
That's exactly it, Chris. We could not propose something this massive in as little time as we, as little time as we gave ourselves to do it. But it's just baby steps. We have to build upon the work of the previous set of chief delegates. Like, we just got permissions 2 days ago. Our hands are tied when it comes to introducing too many new things at once, and it's a consensus process. We have to we put a little change in, or recommend a little change, and then there's a referendum on it, there's an election on it, and then they have to talk about how to implement that, and then those guys next term are going to have a whole bunch of new decisions to make, and one of those decisions should be maybe funding these circles on a programmed basis. But that's something for them to decide. But what we decided was we're just going to create these accounts, and I mean, we're doing that right now. Before even without the bylaws being ratified, we're creating those accounts, and people can voluntarily sign up for them. So whatever.
I think this discussion reflects a difference in the changing mission of Eden from a decentralized elective body to a centralized foundation type body. So we already have a foundation. That's the EOS network. And I think what we need is a truly decentralized body, and of course that should be above the EOS Network Foundation. So I think that's that's where this conflict is. That's why we're feeling this conflict of views. Is it's a differing perspective of what the actual organization function of the organization is. And
Perry, Perry, you keep using the word should. Who dictates what should? Like, who makes should happen?
well, I would point the same question to you. You're trying to change it. It started decentralized.
It didn't start. It started incomplete. There is no completion to Eden right now.
The
They
mission
started
was
without a mission.
decentralized. That was very clear.
But the mission of Eden didn't exist. The mission of Eden, as well as the roles of elected delegates, was all going to be determined by the smart contract programmatically. So it's going to be like, hey, you get 100 EOS a month. This guy gets 1,000 EOS a month. Your roles are different. Figure it out. That's what the invention was originally. But then it was built, it was implemented, but it was built and implemented with the understanding that there was going to be more added onto it. And that is not happening now. So now we're left with an organization, or as I said yesterday, a ship with half a hull. And we're loading the ship up and setting it to sail, and we have half a hull. And now we have to figure out how best to build the rest of that hull, and then to, express the weight capacity for this ship.
Well, I think you're speaking. I didn't get the feeling that all of that was being reflected by the community. My understanding of the original mission of Eden was a decentralized decision-making body that distributed funds from this decision-making body to the community based on the elected officials. All the other stuff that you're implying is, I think, part of an attempt to shift the values of the community, which I believe you are participating in.
But the mission that you're implying there, that's an implied there was no mission. There was no mission for Eden from the beginning.
Wasn't there something about property and
life, liberty, property, way to improve your family and your community, like that? Yeah, put that in code.
I would put, though, I think the overall goal of Eden is to become the voice of an independent voice for EOS community members to be able to come and through this fractal democratic process be able to to have some weight and a voice on the network. That's why I still feel pretty strong about the increase from 15%, because if you look at Eden as a whole, our treasury is tiny. It, like, compared to the entire network. If we want to have influence, we don't need to be depleting that treasury quicker. And Chris brought some solid points, and that's why I didn't really know how to respond to it. But I would to address it now, I would say that the ENF is a little different than it is different from Eden. I just, what I would like to see is to first reach out to the ENF and ask for a top up and see where they stand. I don't understand why that itself is such a, like, first we need to do all this stuff before we go and we ask. Well, why not we ask, see where they stand, and then from there we can make the decisions on how we're gonna deal with the treasury. But I think our goal as chief delegates need to be to try, like, I think that a goal of chief delegates is to try to secure as much of, like, to build our treasury up, like, right. And if you think about it, I think we all have that same similar type of goal, because right now we're trying to get quick wins so that we can get a top up. And my whole argument, though, is like, well, why are we going to get a top up if, like, why not get the top up now when the price is probably very near bottom? Yes, maybe that is speculation, but given, like I said, the catalyst events that are coming up, and with even the design of the Trust EVM, they've done a ton of studies where they've seen when an EVM is deployed on a token, how that across all of these other tokens have had a positive impact on the price. So just with that in mind, if we're going to ask for a top up when the price appreciates, we're not going to have as much of an effect and influence on the network as a whole, because okay, in dollar values, we may have more, we may get a certain amount. We're going to be getting less EOS though if we ask for a top up if the price appreciates versus if we ask for a top up now. And that's kind of where, yeah, I guess I stand and kind of the counterpoint to what Chris said.
It still goes
That's-
back to the idea you've got $300 in your wallet and you want more money from your dad.
Okay, but that's also saying that the ENF is our dad, and if we're independent, like
Let's ask the
that's
VPs then.
dependent.
Okay,
Thing
let's
is,
ask the
no, but the
VPs.
thing is, ENF funded Eden knowing what the design was. The design was 5%. Nowhere in the design did it say that that was going to fluctuate. So to come to the ENF, like,
fluctuate.
but and that's the thing though. The thing is, right now we are speculating on what the ENF is going to say. I want to hear from the ENF itself, because if the ENF comes and says that same thing, then it's just like, okay, well, so now you're dictating what you think we should be doing with our treasury, but that's honestly independent from what that's private. That's our
So, but
treasury
can't
that you
have
gave
both
it to
ways,
us,
though,
but now
you can't have it both ways. You're going to say, okay, we're going to ask ENF for funding, and they're going to say, no, spend what you have. And you're going to say, hey, that's not fair. You can't tell us what to do. It doesn't work that way. And besides, it's the BPs who approve it. They're the ones who ultimately are giving the funds, as Chuck pointed out. And I would argue to the BPs, I don't think we deserve more funding. We have money in the bank. Let's use it. Let's use it and show and have something that strictly comes out of it. It says, look, we've created a top of funnel to bring in new users. Look at our website. And it's working. We've actually counted it. We've added new members to Eden. We're reaching out to new people who aren't just in the EOSIO circle, and we're bringing them in. That can all be possible through these circles. That's part of the point of those circles, is to create an organization that actually attempts to do outreach deliberately. We don't do that right now. We're
Chris,
all very
but
ad hoc and random.
when you say that the goal, the overall end goal for Eden is to become the independent voice for EOS, where community members can come and it essentially kind of becomes, I don't know if we say replace the ENF, because maybe there is a point for having, it is good to have a central, I get it central but independent, not in complete control of the entire network, but Eden being its own independent network. I mean, not independent network, independent organization within the EOS network, that community members can come and share their voice and let it be heard through the fractal democracy. And if that's the end goal, shouldn't we really be thinking a lot about this and strategizing behind where we sit with our treasury? Because currently our treasury is still tiny. And like I said, if we're asking for, compared to the overall amount in the network, like, how much influence are we going to have with 200,000 EOS versus the billion that's in circulation?
Okay, so first of all, yes, I do think that's the end goal. Like, Felix, we've had lots of conversations. We've interacted tons. You know my views on what I think Eden can be and how important this is. Like, right? Like, no argument there. My point is a pragmatic one, and we're not going to get there if we don't have like 1,000 members. We need to have 4 or 5 layers of our election if we want to really be seen as this truly thorough, rigorous process that's selecting top tier people who can lead this blockchain. We're miles away from that. We haven't figured out how to incorporate all the different languages. Like, there's tons of holes. That's a future goal, but we're miles away from there, and we're never going to get there if we don't start to try to treat Eden like an organization. That's why I keep going back to this point. And in order to do that, we need ample funding to actually pay people to build out a proper website, to like actually do what we need to do to create this appealing draw for users. What's the incentive to be an Eden member? If you're an outside of the EOSIO space, why join Eden? There's nothing. Like, we need like a DeFi product, or we need some sort of where we can leverage this fact that we have a decentralized means to determine unique identity and have that become something that we can sell as a service to other dApps that require unique identities. And there's all these things we can try to do. We're not going to get that done if we remain as ad hoc as we currently are. And we're definitely not going to get it done when a chief delegate only gets $3,000 a month to work with.
So, Chris, is Eden, in your vision, is Eden a centralized or decentralized organization?
I don't answer in binaries, so it's a gradient to answer your question.
I think that's the problem.
That life is gray and you choose to take everything to the extremes to
No,
form hypothetical frameworks?
That you are unwilling to accept that Eden is a decentralized organization, and that's the goal.
I just told you I'm unwilling to accept your binary proposition of what centralized versus decentralization is. So is there degrees of decentralization within Eden? Absolutely.
Okay.
I think it's one or the other. It's an unreasonable question.
Okay, so
no.
so you want it? Are you at least trying to make it decentralized?
Is that rhetorical, Perry? Have you followed all of there's so much of me talking about Eden and trying to do stuff for this organization. I'm not sure if I should take that question seriously.
Well, you just told us you want to make it like an organization, quote unquote, an organization, and to
I
do
want
that,
to add organizational structure, Perry. It's totally different. Your ability to put words in mouths is unparalleled, I swear. Creating a organizational structure does not mean we want to shoehorn Eden into a stereotypical archetype, like just exactly what a hierarchical organization looks like. No, it's not the same thing. It's using the Haifa tool, which is what I previously spoke about, which is a DAO tool. It uses holocratic system. There are no bosses. There's no one in charge. The role is not the soul, but you create roles so that people can fulfill particular objectives that help push forward this ad hoc random thing that is Eden. We are structureless, so we're not moving forward. And the
Okay.
idea of the circles is to create a semblance of a structure, not a stereotypical organization, as you've suggested.
I've checked out Haifa, and it's very interesting, and I think it's very interesting. I like it. I like it. But what Dan has put forward is a very specific address to corruption and the collusion that occurs in organizations, and I don't think we should just dismiss it. So I don't think that there's not a role for a DAO like Haifa. The one that is closest to inflation, and we're not quite there yet, but we are the closest at the moment, should be the one that addresses collusion and corruption most strongly. And I think that's why Dan's approach and his vision for Eden originally is something that we should take very seriously. And I think that is different than where you want to bring us. That's my point. And that hasn't been agreed upon by the community. It's being very slowly inculcated into the values by yourself, and I believe also Chuck. But that's what you're feeling right now, is that resistance to the few people that can make that resistance, and the people that have not been banned from Telegram. And that's why I brought up earlier in this discussion the need to control those Telegram groups, because those Telegram groups, the admin,
That sounds pretty centralized if you want to control a Telegram group.
By a decentralized body.
So it is decentralized. So the inculcation you've talked about is not there.
What
I'm confused. What are we? I don't get it anymore.
What I'm suggesting is that Eden follow Dan's design and the spirit of what he was doing, and we truly try to make something that's truly decentralized, and that organization controls the Telegram groups. Because those Telegram groups have a big influence.
We have no power over this stuff, though, Barry. We have absolutely no ability to throw our weight around. All we're doing is creating, for lack of a better word, we're organizing people towards a direction, towards a goal. If the mission, I think it's a worthwhile mission to say that we have planted this tree in EOS, and our mission is to take everything good in EOS and exemplify it. I think we didn't write that down, but I think that's what I see as our mission. But to call it centralized versus decentralized, those are really, really, let's
just say direct.
They're techniques. They're not.
There's no pure definition of either one. I completely accept that there is a spectrum. But in which direction are we going? And
from where is a good idea, because we're coming from utter chaos. If we want to go in a direction, that's fine. But we're coming from an incomplete level of chaos.
Well, I think what Dan has created is a very simple mechanism. And the things that were suggested, like a website, for example, as if that a website can only be created by a centralized organization. I think that's a
Well,
fallacy.
it hasn't been made yet, is the point. So
Well,
I agree with you. Anybody could make
it
it, but
certainly
9 months
can.
in, 9 months in, we don't have a website that's updated. So I'm just pointing out the facts. I'm just saying,
It
look,
certainly
thus far it's
can.
failing. So
And
what? Let's try something new.
I'm about to reveal one. Now, it's not the only one. It's just one piece of. It's just one part of the puzzle, and I think there can be another one that is the official one. But I'm going to suggest by actually producing something and allowing the community to look at it that will provide some key functions for the community. So it's certainly possible that a website can be created and funded by a decentralized organization. That is a fallacy that I think we need to face and address. You can do that. You can fund a developer of a website, and you can take that funding away, and you can have more than one. It's possible to have more than one. So we don't need a centralized organization for that. What we do need is a decentralized body to control money, to control the inflation. That's what we actually need. And that's what I think we're walking away from slowly. We're being slow walked away from that. That's what I feel.
I'd say it's the exact opposite. The exact.
We're walking towards it. We're slowly walking towards it.
Exactly. We're building something for Eden so we can actually have more than 400 members who don't actually participate. Just like 30 people who actually do anything in Eden. The whole point is to have 5,000 people. Then we can say, guess what? We have a huge number of people who are participating, and people from all the BPs, all the different exchanges. They all show up because this is something of value. Then we can say, network, let's use Eden as the process to select those who run the ENF.
You're
That's
responding
exactly the
to
point.
decentralization with the number of members. That's not apples and apples. Of course, everybody wants more members. Absolutely. And in my mind, the thing that would actually attract more members is the belief that the organization is actually addressing decentralization. That's what really excite people. They would say, "Wow, look what EOS is doing. Look what is happening." They were actually addressed the collusion that can occur, and it does occur.
Okay, but one thing we have to get our heads around, Perry, is that creation is a centralized event. The creation of something, anything that we do, is a centralized action. If we want to create decentralization, it has to begin centralized.
But the decision, the body, that's absolutely true. Let's just take, for example, a website that I create that helps the community, or anybody creates it. Let's say you create one, Chuck. You create a website that brings the community together, and it serves the decentralized nature of a community. That doesn't have to be the only website, and that website that you create is centralized under you, 100%.
Okay, but what if there's an official message? What if there's an official message from an official organization?
I want to finish this point, Chuck. But the decision to fund you is not centralized. Thank you.
So, guys, let me just jump in here quickly. I appreciate the conversations, and I appreciate Perry's concerns to an extent, although I think also some of your concerns are bordering on more kind of I don't know. It sounds like a bit accusatory of like Chuck and Chris, whereas I know that I've been following Chuck and Chris for a long time here, and I can appreciate some concerns about centralization, but at the same time, I know that they're both super excited about the principles of Eden and more equal animals and so forth. And so I think it's good for us to remember that we all are on the same team here, and we're all working together to make a decentralized application or a decentralized community that works to protect the independence, although we have different ways of going about it. So I would also encourage everybody to just also be respectful when we speak to each other and keep that in mind. And then the other thing I want to say too is, unfortunately, I have to go. I'll keep my recording going open. So I'll be recording this, and I'll also listen to the entire recording later, and we'll post it as always, and we'll keep recording until the end. So I suppose that Felix can moderate it, and if anybody else wants to help, then that could be appreciated too. But yeah, thank you so much for the inspiring discussions. And also, before I go, I'll just remind everybody, of course, the next Eden election is coming up on July 9th in like 6 days from now at 13 UTC, and so everybody should register there. And yeah, thank you everybody so much, and please carry on.
I
Thanks for
appreciate
the kind
that.
words, Dogman. And just to point out, the irony of this, of course, is that Perry is not an Eden member. That's also kind of funny.
I want to make it. I want to make a distinction.
I would
not-
encourage Perry to
I'm
join
not
Eden, by the
making-
way.
I'm not making it personal about. I'm not making it personal to Chris or Chuck for the purposes of having any kind of negativity towards them. I am suggesting that we pay attention to their words, though, because they're important. And I think that they're not hiding those words. They're being very clear about them.
The same words that you try to put in our mouth when you rephrase what we do, man. You're like, it's terrible. The shit that's coming to your mouth, I find it like flabbergasting. You don't want to make it personal. That you're accusatory. We're saying we're inculcating an idea and we're centralizing Eden for some sort of nefarious purpose that somehow feeds the ENF, and we're taking away from the goals of like all this other stuff you bring up. It's like it is kind of personal because you're like you're rephrasing what we're saying into shit that's not true.
I don't think I'm rephrasing. You've accused me of that before, and I referred to your rephrasing your words, and I referred to a private discussion that we had where you said exactly the opposite, Chris. So I'm not going to accept that.
You do it all the time. You did it here. I'll wait. I'll call it out again when you do it. Go ahead. Speak some more, and I'm sure it'll come up. It'll be great.
Just one thing I'll jump in and just say before I go here too. I feel like Perry has been like kind of. I use the word accusatory. I don't know if that's the proper word of Chuck and Chris. I think that, Chris, you could also give Perry the benefit of the doubt a bit more too, because I think that Perry does intend to do the best for the community, and I think that's helpful for us all to remember that. And I know you're probably also keeping that in mind, Chris, but I would just recommend everybody be patient with each other and just work together to help each other, and then not jump to conclusions and talk about how stuff is coming out of people's mouth and stuff like that, and just try to, I don't know, to just keep it more kind and so forth. Because also these can help set an example. I mean, the way that we operate Eden and the way that we lead Eden is both in terms of like how we're actually doing it on a systems design level and how we're building Eden, but it's also us setting as an example for new people to join the community. And if somebody new were to join the community and they see like two people like kind of getting, I don't want to say angry, but people who are having vibrant disagreements, let's say, then that can be something that can sway people from coming to join the community. So obviously it's just like a core group of community members here, and we all know each other, so discussions can get heated, but I think it is something good to strive for, that in the future we can learn to sort out our disagreements in the kindest way possible.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Dan. Dan,
Yeah,
if you allows me maybe to jump in a little bit, because I want to elevate also this conversation, because now it's seems to be a little bit stagnant. I am myself an Eden member since the beginning, and I could be not an Eden member like Perry or like someone else, but what I want to see, and I speak with my language, with my wording. So what I want to see really with all my heart from this chief delegates board member of Eden, I want to see them as truly taking in account what the community wants to do also. And to have this Eden fractal that was just going since a couple of weeks now, 4 weeks, Dan, I think that's correct, 4 weeks. We will entering into our 5th week on Wednesday, next Wednesday. So there we are striving EOS, we are giving new proposals, new ideas, information. We use the fractal process, not only the fractal playoffs process, but the fractal process in nature. And we want to strive EOS we want to strive Eden on EOS because I love this, let's say, this layer that we have on top of EOS. I love that. I respect a lot also the people that are in there, like Chris Barnes, like Chuck McDonald. Every people that are in there, they are doing an amazing job. And it's not easy, very easy to do that when you have only now like 3 months to do the things. Before that was 6 months. Now it's 3 months. So you have to iterate fast. Beside of that, the price is low. That's a fact. All the ecosystem is very low. But what I want to see, it's that we have loosely coupled circles. And the circles for me are not only the circles that the Eden on EOS is proposing with the circle managed by chief delegates. For me, everyone can create a circle around EOS. Like you have now Jesse Jaffe doing a proposal, or Dancing Joy with Eden Fractal. For me, that's all that are circles, and that are led by many people, not just by one guy. It's all about many guys. So what I want to see, it's really a board member of chief delegates that are delegate their needs because they see a 360 vision for this ecosystem, and they use the power, let's say the workforce, the manpower, exactly the manpower of people that are very involved into this EOS ecosystem, and that want to strive that forward. So it's not just all in the hands of the chief delegates. It's in the hand of all. And like this, we are doing more decentralization of power. We are striving more. We are decreasing the incumbent advantages. We are also decreasing the liability. The liability is very important. So we are becoming a DAO, or let's exactly a decentralized autonomous organization, or a DAC, like you want the wording. But we are not knowing ourselves exactly how it's turned out. And we are taking the things like Chuck said at the beginning. That was just a nightmare some week ago, and now we are trying to organize. So if we put too much complexity into the bylaws, the next chief board member will have a pain to figure out. Maybe there will be not spectrum of skill set like Michael O'Sullivan, Chuck McDonald, Brock Pierce, Gracie Lau, and Edgar Fernandez. Maybe that will be other guys, and they will maybe not have the same spectrum of skill set. So we have to make the things very, I would say, simple, not simplistic, but very easy to go, because then we can come with other ideas. And to finish on the idea of Felix, and not only Felix, myself included for sure, I want to be honest here. I don't see the 15% like a good idea. I see very important that the chief delegate are using their funds to, let's say, sponsor or fund what you want. Use those funds to fund Eden Fractal or other initiatives that are really striving. And now we have an arm. Let's say we have yeah, exactly. We have an arm. It's Eden Fractal that's empower Eden on EOS to go forward. And it's not just for this July 9. That will be for after. We have to think for later on. And I agree, the price is very low, and that will be a very good idea to approach other structures and ask them for some funding. Voila, that's my doubt on that. Maybe I am totally wrong, but for the moment, that's my doubt.
Oh,
So,
thank you,
and
Patrick.
good job, everyone. Good job, everyone. I will be there. I will be on July 9, and I want to be a delegate level 1. As this season 2, I want to continue to be a delegate level 1 and sustain Grow Eden by Jesse Jaffe. Very nice initiative that has a good interface with Eden Fractal and with Eden on EOS. And I know those people because I have worked with them, like Jesse Jaffe, and also I have experienced Chris Barnes. We were not always on the same level, but I have to admit that I have also changed my mind because I see the value that he provides, that Chris, you provide. So for this reason, we have to be focused on the IDs, not on the people. Because today you can love someone, maybe tomorrow you don't love anymore because the IDs and the information are not, you are not loving these IDs, but maybe later on you will love him. So thank you very much, Chris, for all what you do, and Chuck and all. And we will go on July 9 with good spirit, lion spirit. We want to be independent to have our best freedom. It's very important that Eden is a circle, let's say a layer on top of EOS that is very independent, no incumbent advantages, and that we are doing the things right. But what does it mean right? Maybe today it's right to do the things like that, and tomorrow we will see, oh no, we have to change. Maybe we will have to compose with some regulation. Dan Larimer said one time, maybe we will have to choose to accept to live in two parallel worlds. Regulation world with decentralization world, or let's say centralization world with decentralization world, and find the good compromise. So it's not just white, black, and to just say is it decentralized or is it centralized? Decentralization is not the goal. The goal is to distribute the data at the most. And you have always to begin a little bit centralized. I agree totally on that. So no, it's and Perry, I love your talk because that's help us also to find our that's good. That's give a good debate. But yes, we have to sustain us and not divide us. That's very important. Yeah. Okay, yeah. I stop here. Thank you.
Well, yeah, no, thank you very much, Patrick. That's yeah, I agree with many points, and one thing I guess that kind of came out of that for me of thoughts is, there's clearly, there's I feel there's a divide a little bit with an animosity. I feel kind of, and you see it all the way up to the top with our leaders. We got Yves with the EOS Foundation, then we have Dan Larimer with the Fractally team, and but I don't know. Not like getting too much into that. I just think that like us as community members, though, we can take the both of, like, I think everyone here though too is trying to strive to be able to merge the two and work, and even at the top level, I think they're trying to work with each other. They've made it clear like that there's just differences in opinions, but Patrick brings up the Eden Fractal, and that's something I plan on really pushing going into this election too, and it's something that I think everyone here should really consider as well. As every chief delegate can have their own fractal. You don't even have to call it a fractal. You don't even have to do the same process, but do something similar in the sense that you're meeting up every single week and you're like, hey, I got this amount of funding. What are we doing with it? And hold these weekly transparent meetings so now we can actually follow up and seeing how these funds are deployed. If we want to collectively group up and we have multiple delegates meeting at the same meeting, we can start to form these circles, form these initiatives, and really hold the community accountable by being super transparent and seeing and measuring who's being efficient with these funds. That's what I've always seen this whole process being. We are electing leaders of being who are the best fund managers, doing the best with these funds. And you can't fault anybody if they're being completely transparent and experimenting it, because then through there you can find where things went wrong. And yeah, I really want to advocate for the Eden fractal, and that's where I think, like I said, it's not even just the Eden fractal, just like the fractal process, and maybe even not even the fractal process, just the weekly meetings of how are we dealing with the funds. Anyone who's elected as a delegate and chief delegate, I think, has a duty to be accessible to the community. And like, huge shout out to Chuck, even Chris. Chris has been, Chris is not he's a former chief delegate, but he shows up. He's always available to the community. Chuck, he's been here. Like, I appreciate those from the chief delegates, because that's being truly part of a representative of the community. Like, you're here and you're hearing the voices of the community. And that's why I think, moving into this next election, it's going to be, I'm super excited. It's going to be interesting, because I'm coming in, especially I have I'm wanting to run, but also the way I'm going to vote. This time it's not like obviously I want to reach consensus, but I will stand firm on certain points. I want to see, and I want to be able to get a confirmation via video on, before I give my vote to somebody, if I give my vote on, you're going to do at least a bare minimum of, like I said, I think at least being able to be transparent with how are we managing these funds, and allowing opportunity to allow the community's voice to kind of also help make that decision. Because that's the true way of decentralizing this whole process, is like, yes, the chief delegate and the delegates have the end say at the end of the day, but ideally we want them to be able to be taking into consideration everybody's voice. And yeah, I just think that's how we all win. And
Totally,
yes.
totally. I don't want to say I agree with you, Felix. I don't want to make Biazed into this call, but yeah, it's very important. Each of us, we have the right to create a circle. I named it circle, collaborative circles around the house, or collaborative ecosystems. Okay, collaboration is very important. So, and we don't need to be into Eden. I love Eden for sure, but we don't need to be into Eden to be able to create that. But it's clear for some people that give a motive, let's say an impulsion to do so. That should not be the incentivizing mechanism, that should just be an impulsion. Like for the money, we need more money for sure. But if we have the right to have more money, let's say, like you said, Felix, okay, there is money on the table now, we say 10%, 15%, and what about the next chief delegate? Maybe they will say, 20%. That seems to be very, that's opened the door to have more money without to give too much justification for that. For me, money is just the compensation mechanism. That should be not the incentivizing mechanism to do the things. Because now we see that with Fractally, there is no money on the table. We are all there going every Saturday, or we are contributing there. Because what's give us? Not money, okay, but that's give a lot of metrics, data on what the people are doing. We see exactly what they are doing, or at least we see their behaviors. We see if they are reliable, if we can maybe work with them. And Idoneos also, by doing this election, to be into breakout room also, you see the of the people. I say that now because I know those people. But let's say if I wouldn't know Chris, if I wouldn't know Chuck, and I will meet them for the first time, maybe I will need to have some proof of what they do. So for me, it's very important to have those initiatives, because that give an intent testifying, where you testify what you want, what is your intent, then you will make actions and repeated actions, and then you will deliver something. So for me, July 9, when I go there and I am into a breakout room with anyone that can be, I want to know exactly what you want to do. What is your intent manifesto? Let's say, what is your manifesto? What you want to do? What you are advocating for? Because it's just to say, okay, I mean, I am a good leader. I will lead very well Eden Onios. No, I want to know exactly what it is. And when I am looking backward, the video of Chuck after the election, the video of Edgar, and the video of Michael O'Sullivan. I am looking backward what they have stated just after the election when I have interviewed them. That's true. They have made exactly what they have advocating for. For me, I say that for me, I see exactly their intent was very well testified, and they have iterated and very well, and shout out for that, because I don't know in this situation if we would have a chief delegate like or so capable like them. So yeah, okay, I am very positive as always, and also we need action. We need action. It's not the time to complain and to find who has made that or who has made that. It's not about one man. We are a community, and yeah. Stop.
Thanks, Patrick. I just wanted to say,
Chuck, you know me, Chuck. Yeah, you know me. I can speak hour and advocate for your work and all. And Chris also, you know me. So I will shut my mouth and continue to do shit. And,
there you go. No, thanks, man. I think we all agree with what you're saying. There's a fight, like there isn't enough funding right now to tackle projects. There's enough funding in delegates and chief delegates' hands to distribute tokens of gratitude to people. Maybe there's enough funding to sort of maybe like prime the pump in some ways, or there's enough funding to maybe get like a proof of concept visually done. You know, there's not enough funding to actually accomplish things. Looking where people are putting their directing their money, like for example, chief delegates. Like I've participated throughout my life in a whole shit ton of volunteer organizations. I've sat on a bunch of boards. I've been chair and CEO of a bunch of organizations, and it takes a lot of time. And there are very few organizations out there that actually compensate that time. And I have now I've just started another not-for-profit in my town here, and we're looking to compensate people for their time. We're not building a business model anymore that relies on volunteerism, because people get burnt out, they get embittered, they get into fighting with each other. There's a whole lot of shit that goes down when you build an organization around volunteerism. And the fact is that if we're going to have events where delegates and chief delegates are invited or expected to come out to them, that's part of the, like, I am not keeping a tally of the number of hours that I spend on Eden, but I can tell you it's more hours than I spend on my family. And
that I believe very well. Without a doubt. Yeah, for sure.
And that's probably not a healthy state of affairs, right? If this was a career, that would be a normal state of affairs. Most people spend more time on their career than they spend on their family. But this is not a career. This is not, at this point, it is not a career. It's not a job. But I can tell you straight up, I'm not distributing every penny that comes into my account. I am happy to distribute a little bit of it, but those are token amounts. Those are not prime funding levels. For example, we cannot depend on delegates and chief delegates to upgrade our code or to host websites or do anything that is critical for the organization. The organization has to have its own shit together and it has to fund its own direction. And that's it. You can't expect any grown-ups to play in this sandbox without at least that in place. So I am perfectly happy with transparency. I'm perfectly happy being open and completely truthful about everything, every bit of funding that comes into my account. But I would ask you to look at the amount of time that I put into this organization before and I'm not taking criticism from anybody here. I'm just saying, for every delegate and chief delegate, anybody who's receiving funding through the Eden mechanism, you have to understand that at this point we just do not have the funding levels to call this a worker proposal system or a funding mechanism for projects. It just is not it.
Chuck,
Yeah.
I want to express sympathy and admiration at the same time, ironically, for the chief delegates and the position that they've taken and the work that you're doing. And I have absolutely no problem whatsoever of you taking funds and compensating yourself for your work. I want to encourage that. I hope that becomes the standard, is that people are compensated and incentivized to do all the work. And I recognize the amount of work that you're doing 100%. What I want to do is I want to address that conflict of interest, let's say, I don't know how else to put it, but the conflict between paying yourself and paying projects on a limited amount of budget.
I don't see a conflict there, but go ahead.
Well, okay. Well, obviously, there is some trade-off that needs to occur, whether you pay yourself or whether you compensate a community project. And what I would say is, this goes back to the proposal that I made in the last week or so, which is that I think one of the most important things that we can do is create subscription model. And if we can push it down into the protocol itself, far enough into the protocol, that even better. But what a subscription model does is it allows us to both commit to some degree to a project, but at the same time spread that payment over time, and we have control within, depending on how the settings are for that particular subscription. You can either control it within a term or between terms of chief delegates. So that means you don't need to pay everything up front, which gives the community more control over the project, which I think is a good thing. We can all agree that's a good thing. And it aligns the interests of the community with the project. The project will, if they know that they're on a subscription, and then that subscription can be changed, either canceled or toned down in terms of the amount or the frequency of the payment. That gives us essential control, and it allows us to operate and initiate more projects at any one given time. So for the same budget, we can now, if we're setting up subscriptions as paying for and committing to the whole thing up front, which I think is kind of crazy, and it's actually, I believe it's the exact opposite of what Fractally is doing, whereas they're paying after the fact. So if we have this kind of like middle ground where it's a subscription, I think that's a solution to what we're doing, and we won't have to increase the budget as much. I'm okay with the idea that the amount of budget that we have can go higher than 15, or at some point could be lower. We could change it. I'm not as comfortable with making those changes before we've got some of our basics down and we know the direction that we're going, that the organization is going. So thank you.
It's good to hear, Perry, that you actually with us that believe Hi-Fi is a good option for Eden, because that's exactly what you do there. Membership controls, if I accept terms, what works to be done, payment agrees, and all these matters are all in the membership's hands, and similarly. So it's Hi-Fi is definitely something worth, because you need to have some permanent roles. But as an example, what you're saying, I was delegate, not now, but previously I jumped out of this one benefiting someone else. But when I got in, I clearly stated, if I'm gonna put a little bit time into Eden and similar and stuff, that takes away from me having a chance to earn fiat and similarly to survive a daily bread and other things. So I basically said 10%, wherever I end up, 10% of my receipts from Eden goes to me. And then I capped it at a maximum, I don't remember what it was now, but I think it was 1,500 US because of fluctuations US and similarly. Because like Chuck said, and I totally agree with his last words, I mean, voluntarism come only so far. And it's always going to lose out against those that are paid. That's why centralized organizations work so well. So, we got to get a little bit more commercial. And this Hi-Fi is, of course, built up on the circles we deem that we need. And then the membership are the ones who decide yes or no or what. And they even have expiries. I mean, that's variables you can change, of course, all through. And but they have expiry dates every 3 months, so that not someone can just sit there for 6 months and getting forgotten and earning for nothing and whatever. So I just wanted to add that, and it's good to hear that, Perry, you're in on the same line there. Thanks.
Well, I wasn't aware that it has a subscription. You're saying that you make a commitment, a 3-month commitment to the.
Let me explain very quickly. The video, I'll post it here. I was going to do it, but I posted it different places. There's a 1 hour, 20 minutes that goes through all the different segments of Hi-Fi. I've gone through it 3 times myself to really get a hand on it. And what it is, let's say I do the recaps that some of you are aware of and similar. Let's say that I want to continue to do it. I want to expand it. Okay, I went to Pomelo and got a little bit of help there. So therefore, I continue work and think about it and how to do things, and hopefully get it in a better shape. But if I was in Hi-Fi structure and in some circle there, I can put up my task. I want to do recaps, and I tell them exactly how I plan to do, what I want to be paid, how much effort I will put in. All these details are put in as variables of mine. And then the community have set the different thresholds, how much for quorum, how much for a go ahead with it or not, etc., etc. And then all the members vote on it. So the members decide if my offer is good enough or forget about it. All members, as long as you reach whatever you have put as a majority, which would be 3+1 with us and similar. So it's not a decentralized in a common sense.
Sorry, Lenny. It's a decentralized procurement process, which is exactly what we're, it's an ideal of Eden is to do something like that, and we don't have the wherewithal to commission coding for that. It's way better for us to just go and purchase it or hook up with an outfit like Hi-Fi to help us do it.
Okay, Lenny, if you post that, I would love to take a look at that. I really appreciate that. But Chuck, did I not hear you say before that you didn't think that we should be going in the direction of a worker proposal? Is that different than what you just mentioned?
No, we need a worker proposal system inside Eden, but Eden itself is not a worker proposal system for the network.
All right.
Oh, I see. So you're saying?
I put in the link. I just want to shout that.
Oh, I see. What you're saying, Chuck, is that you think it could be a worker proposal system for creating infrastructure within Eden, not for EOS in general, like to do anything outside of Eden, just to do the infrastructure for Eden itself. That's what you're saying.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. We need a procurement process.
Okay. Yeah, I think we need, and I'm glad we're making this distinction. I think we need one that does the opposite. I don't think that we need to be creating infrastructure for Eden. I think we just simply need to be creating a mechanism for the pure decision making of distributing the funds, and it should be for everything outside of Eden. So I think if we do what you're suggesting, and I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, I'm trying to understand what you're saying. It has a tendency to centralize
We
the
need to
organization.
centralize first. We need to centralize so that we can decentralize.
Okay, so I'm not putting words in your mouth when I'm saying that you're trying to decentralize Eden. Excuse me, start trying to centralize Eden. I'm not putting words in your mouth.
No, I'm not saying we need to centralize Eden. I'm saying that we need to take centralized decisions. Like we've elected people using a decentralized mechanism, but those people now have power and ability to make decisions on behalf of the organization. And it's not huge decisions, but they within the bylaws, chief delegates have the ability to make decisions to shape the direction of the organization.
And I
And
think creating infrastructure is an act of centralizing the organization. I think that's fair to say. And
It runs on a central code base. Someone's got to write it. There's a GitHub that's pretty
that
central.
is true. That is true, and that goes back to it is a spectrum. What I'm saying is that it should be minimal, and we should keep it simply to the election process and the distribution of those funds. And what I'm hearing from yourself, Chris, and from Chuck, is that we should go beyond that. We should be creating infrastructure for Eden itself beyond those two limited aspects, and creating something that maybe looks more like a foundation. That's what I'm hearing. Now, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm characterizing you incorrectly, but that's what I'm hearing. We're creating something that looks more like a foundation than what Dan originally put forth, and what is the birth of Eden itself. So that's been my point.
Before next discussion on this, I suggest strongly if one want to express views on this centralization, decentralization, and similarly when it comes to appointing certain people in certain areas, look through, spend that 1 hour, 20 minutes, whatever it is, this video. It goes through all the different roles and how to set it up and all these things. And, it's what I've been a serial entrepreneur for 30, 40 years. I've been in business all my life, and similarly, this concept is very good. And I've been Eden and all these kind of things now here since EO started. But it's really something to look at and to understand it and then discuss from there. Otherwise, we're wasting a lot of time back and forth.
Well, thank you, Lenny, Perry, and everyone here. I think, that would be a good one to wrap us up on. Yeah, so like again, I appreciate everyone here. It's exciting. We're I personally think we've made a lot of progress in Eden in this, these last 3 months, just from starting from, up from the chief delegates with their weekly calls and centering them more like more focused 1 hour calls and objectives, and then also the community engagement has been picking up, and it's going to be very exciting to see how this election goes, and I think some great stuff's going to come out of it, and that's just going to just further help us move forward, and so yeah, so I'll be looking forward to catching everyone next week as well. So it'll be a great way to follow up after the Eden election, and we'll have some new chief delegates. So best of luck, everyone that's there, and I look forward to seeing you guys throughout the week. And I guess I open up for any last closing remarks that anyone would like to add before we end, or like I said, we can obviously, you guys can always hang out in here. I'm just on my end, I'm gonna be closing out the show part here.
I'd like to thank Dan and yourself for putting us on, and just the utmost respect to Chuck and Chris, because thank you for engaging in the dialogue. I know how much work, and listen to the meetings, that actually a lot of these things are answered by coming to consensus, and just your all your dedicated work in the process is really respected. So thank you so much.
I join me to that also, yeah. Duane, the same words for our board member, and shout out to Felix Van Sinjoy to organize this by-wire town hall. That's very good stuff, because we have nice conversation and we are able to find a consensus here. That's nice. Thank you.
One thing, Perry, do you want an invitation to Eden?
Sure. Absolutely. I've been waiting. Thank you. Absolutely. I'm honored that you made it, Chuck.
So
I'm available to be a witness if you need.
I'm afraid I don't think that I'll be elected, to be honest, but I'm happy to participate.
That's all we want, participants.
Yeah, I think that's okay. I think it's important that we all participate in some way. I don't expect to be elected too far, but I do look forward to influencing, and I think that's the role of everybody, is to go in and express yourself, and influence the group as a whole. And I also participate outside of the group. That's also part of it. That's also part, as in any decentralized role, any society, there are roles outside of, for example, politicians. There is the media. The media can influence, and that's why we have the First Amendment in the United States. So there are multiple roles that we can take, and I look forward to taking as many of them as I can. Thank you. I appreciate that. And thanks, guys.
Send your EOS account. Just drop it in the chat, the video chat here. I'll get it, and I'll get you set up.
Yeah, I'm around all day if you're not on Eden and want to go through the process. Just ping me if you need a witness.
That's Duane.
Duane, throw your account in there, Duane, and I'll get you set up too. One more person, anybody?
I am okay to witness Grappa if you want.
Okay, throw your account in there. I'll get it started right now.
Okay.
Thanks.
Into the Discord?
Yep. Just in the Eden Town Hall chat.
Eden Town Hall chat, okay.
Fantastic.
If you're having trouble finding it, Patrick, if you see where it says Eden Town Hall, the voice chat, if you hover over it, you can open up a chat.
Click on open chat. Yeah, it's a little monitor window.
Into the public room?
No, are you on your mobile?
Yeah, I am on my mobile, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, let me see how to do it on mobile.
There is Eden Town Hall, and on top there is Shift Delegate, Eden Delegate.
Yeah, no, so it's like click on the Eden Town Hall, the actual voice one. And then like, do you see the list of everybody in this voice chat?
Yeah.
Okay, in the top right corner, there's a little chat box. If you click on that, that's the chat.
On the right corner on the bottom?
Nope, top right.
Top right.
Right when it says Eden Town Hall video, when you hover over it, a little open chat box appears just in the video call part.
Yeah, if you're on mobile,
Sorry, I am a little lost.
So, what is your account name? I can find it.
NCO LTD 123451. NCO Ltd 123451.
That's your Eden account?
That's my Eden account, yeah. NCO Ltd 123451, yeah.
All right, I'll get it set up and then I'll whatever.
Okay, so
Oh, I send you a message, Chuck. I send you a message. Yeah.
So I've got Chuck, Dwayne, and Patrick. Thank you, gentlemen. I'm honored.
Hey, it's an honor. Like this, you
Well,
are
my
involved
pleasure.
also. That's good.
Sweet deal. Sweet. All right. Well, cool. I look forward to seeing all you guys here. Also, you know, you guys are also welcome to come join us on Wednesday for the Eden Fractal at 13 UTC.
I
Good
guess
reminder.
one call to action is if you are an Eden member and you've invited anybody, I think it's our responsibility to remind the people that we've invited to Eden about the election. So if we could all just kind of be good custodians of the process and reach out as much as possible. I know some of my friends are really busy and it takes a couple prodding, but I think if we I think I've got maybe half a dozen. I prod them. I think I get, you know, at least half of them to the meeting. So at the very least, you know, there's a lot of people that haven't maybe been involved or watching the meetings as much as us, just to remind them that we need them to be even part of the process to make this a success.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And we did a nice tweet that was Friday, Saturday. A nice tweet about the next election, and Chris Barnes also has made a good explanatory on the date. And I have added that to the tweet, and now this tweet is circulating. So you have to retweet that. You have to answer to that. So make like a snowball. That's very important. Yeah.
Yep. Sounds good. Yep. And yep. Good point, Dwayne. I'll definitely make sure to do that as well. But all right, guys, feel free to hang out here, but I'm gonna head out. Like I said, it was a pleasure, and I appreciate every single one of you guys for showing up. Great conversation as always, and I'll catch you guys later in the chats and throughout the week, and then next week, and then obviously this Saturday. So till then, go Eden.
Go Eden.
Eden, thanks, man.
Thanks, guys.
And
Thanks, Felix, for doing this. Take care, guys.